Alright everyone, welcome back to how to create a base defense game in Unity. This is session 4.1 base tower initial setup. So the first thing that we need to do with the towers is, of course, we're gonna get our resources prefabs and we're gonna instantiate each of the towers in the map. So we're gonna go ahead and grab the tower and create them, all three of them, in one of these points in the map. And we'll see that they don't have much, but we will adjust that just in a second. So the first thing that we need to do is going to enter this tower. It's going to go to the base tower controller, and the base tower controller is going to need some stuff. So the first thing that the base tower controller will need is a public game object, projectile. And this is obvious that each of the towers needs a projectile. And then we are going to have a public void shoot, and we will need to shoot toward a target. So we're gonna have a transform tower, target. I'm gonna call it target. And the projectile also needs some coding, so we do have the projectile code over here, and this projectile is gonna have a private transform target, and this projectile will follow this target. So basically update, the projectile wants to get to the tower's location, so we want to do a lerp. So the way lerp works is we Google it and then we create it, because lerp is very complicated. So lerp Unity, I'm googling it and we will check out in the reference. So we go ahead and do this, and you can see that it says we need the start time, we need the journey length, and we will just learn through the documentation. It's very important that you guys use this documentation for almost everything that you do whenever you have any doubts. And lerp is something that is always very, very finicky. So we have a start and an end. So we will check, we'll actually just save our starting position, vector3 starting position, and on awake we will record that position. So our starting position is equals to transform that position at the point, the start of awake. And then we see that we also need the speed, so we're just gonna set private float speed. And we also need an initialize method, but this is going to be public void initialize. And this initialize is going to take a transform target, a float speed, and here we will add up we will just do this target equals target, and this at speed equals speed. That way we are saving our speed in our target. So it also says we have to save the start time. So private float start time, and as such we'll say that start time equals time. That way we have a start time. It also says total distance between the markers, but that is not all that correct. Because you see fractional journey completed, this is covered divided by journey length, but that is not correct. Well, yeah, that's not correct, because we're gonna be varying the distance. So we're just gonna copy this and change it in our own code. We're gonna Control-C, Control-V. So it says distance moved by time.speed. So we have the time.time minus the start time. This is correct. This is exactly the same. This is the distance that we have moved for now up until that point. The fraction of the journey completed, so journey length is going to be changing constantly because it depends on I'm going to be making a float journey length, which is going to be equal to vector 3, that distance between starting position and target that position. At the start of this, if target equals null, then we destroy this game object. Destroy game object. Oh, I'm sorry about that noise. Someone just randomly passed. In front of my house, so we will continue on with this tutorial. Projectile journey completed, and then we have start market that position. That is not wrong. We have the start position. End market that position is our target, that position, and we have the fraction of the journey already calculated up here, so we don't have to calculate it again. And that is basically it. And so now the other thing that we must do is on collision enter. So basically we will set an on collision enter or on trigger enter. I think on trigger enter is better. So on trigger enter, because I don't want my bullet to have collision. So if other that tag, or rather compare tag, is enemy, we have to add the tag enemy to our enemies. Then other that get component enemy controller that get damage, and the int that we're gonna pass in is 1. And now we will make sure. I wonder if this will work. Oh, we'll check it out. We're gonna go to our prefabs, assets, resources, prefabs, and we will click on monsters, click on the transport, and check that we don't have an enemy thing. So we're just gonna add enemy here, and all of these guys, the transports which have colliders, will be tagged enemy. We see that they have box colliders and they are tagged as trigger, so that should work just fine. And that's the way the arrows will work in theory. Also, we need to set a bool, private bool, initialize. And here we'll set initialized to be true. Also, we have to set it basically to be false at the start, just to make sure that nothing weird happens. And here, if initialized is false, then we return. Just so we're just trying to avoid that this happens when we don't need it to happen. So okay, our base tower controller has this, and I need this to have another trigger. So on trigger enter, if the trigger for the tower is entered, then we'll shoot. If other that compare tag is enemy, we shoot, and targets other that target. Oops, that target. Transform, sorry. And now for the projectile, we will projectile prefab. We will instantiate the projectile, but the initialization of the projectile will be different for each type of projectile. Of course, also this has to be the on trigger enter is a public, protected virtual void, because I want to be able to override the way this works in the bomb tower more than anything else. I don't want to do this exact thing. I want to do more an AoE thing. And for the freeze tower, I want this. I want the slow method. I want to slow the enemy for a few seconds. Also, the enemy base controller. The enemy controller must have a slowing IEnumerator. So I'm actually going to create it right now. I'm going to do public IEnumerator slow, and we will also include here float slow time. And we will say while we need to create a new variable, which is going to be our private float remaining slow time, which is starts at 0. So while remaining slow time is more than 0, then navmesh.speed, navmesh_agent.speed is going to be 4. No matter what happens, is our speed is going to be 4, so it's going to be way slower, or I mean it's going to be 1. I think I'm going to change the speeds in a second. So remaining slow time, it's going to be plus slow time, and then we yield return null. So basically what's happening here, we're adding to the slow time. While the slow time is more than 0, we do that, then we just get out and say yield return null. Yeah, okay, so we go back to our project. This is for the slow in the future, for when we have the freeze tower. I guess I like covering material before it's completely necessary. Alright, so the next thing that we will do here is we have our arrow, we have our, let me check the base tower. We're not shooting yet, so this is gonna public virtual void shoot. Again, this is just the base tower initial setup, so we're just gonna set everything up and then do it with each tower. It's not gonna be like completely 100% ready yet. So for shooting, we do game object projectile prefab. Well, projectile is equals to instantiate projectile prefab, and we're going to leave it to each tower to initialize their projectile. So yeah, basically. So let me see if I am right on this. So if I do an override, we can grab shoot and we can say projectile, right? Oh no, we can't. It's private. It's set inside this. Oh, so we can actually only do. So the way that I do this is I throw a new not implemented exception that is we need using system, and then we throw a not implemented exception, and if whoever's doing if your scripting doesn't override this method, then you will get an error every time the tower tries to shoot, and that way you will not forget to override it. Okay, we instantiate the projectile prefab whenever we shoot in our arrow tower. That doesn't matter right now, it doesn't affect us too much. So the next thing that I want to do is a tower placement. So we have the base tower script with not much stuff on it. So basically I'm going to actually add the arrow, the projectiles. We have the arrow here so that we can save this prefab. We have the bomb tower here. We can save the prefab to bomb cannonball. There's our script, our projectile for the bomb tower. And then we have the ice tower, which can also have the projectile assigned, which is our ice ball that I made before. It should be over here. We can apply that. And then we can delete. There we go. Now these points, these little points, the possible tower placement points, will have to communicate with someone, and their someone is the gameplay UI controller. So my gameplay UI controller will have to be an instance so that everyone can communicate to it without using complicated stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do public gameplay UI controller instance. I did not call it static. I will do the same operation that we did before on our other manager. So we will do if instance is null, then instance is this, else debug.log you have more than one gameplay UI controller. Alright, so now we have that. Our placement points, these guys, need to have a script also. So I'm gonna add that script right now. Create a C# script. It's gonna be a placement tower placement point controller. We're gonna wait a little bit, and all of these guys, all my possible tower placement points are gonna get one of these, and I also have the other side, tower area 1. All of these guys will also get one of these. And on our gameplay UI controller, I want to have a public void show tower menu, and I want to transform. For this, I want to transform placement point. For now, it doesn't have any functionality, but now we go to our tower placement point controller, and I go ahead and I will have a private bool occupy, and I will have, I will change this. So I had a transform here, but I actually want the whole script so that I can communicate back with it if I need to, which I most definitely, very probably will need to communicate back to the tower placement point controller. So private bool occupied, and I need a, private, let's say, base tower controller tower. So that's the tower that's going to be occupying me, or this tower placement point controller. So on mouse down, let me see if this works. Usually this betrays me, so I'm just going to do debug.log mouse down. So I'm going to check if actually my placement points will detect that I click on them, because many times they just betray me, honestly. So click, yeah, you can see that I'm clicking on them. You see that the mouse down message got written down into the thing. So good. So on mouse down, I will say, my friend, the gameplay UI controller, play UI controller, instance that show tower menu, and I will pass in this guy. So whenever I show the tower menu, also I want the game to be paused. But we'll think about that later. I don't think that's too necessary. You can set the towers before the game starts instead of generating the level immediately, and that will be my game manager's part, but we'll do that after this part. Or rather, I know that's for the game flow part of the structure of the game. But yeah, so base initial tower setup, we can now show the menu for the towers, and now we have to check our canvas. And so we will create a new image, UI image. This is gonna be my tower placement menu, and this image is gonna be UI fill green. We're gonna set native size. It's very small actually, so I don't want to set native. I want it to be large enough to cover maybe this area of the UI, just enough. And now I'm gonna add a text that will say, which tower would you like to place? We're gonna move this up here, make it way larger so we can read it, because as you can see it's almost too small. There we go. Centered. Move it up. I will add a few buttons. So I need 3 buttons, one for each type of tower. So button, there we go, over here. And I'm gonna change the sprite to be, I need an arrow, right? So I'm gonna check arrow. That's not correct. Bow, yeah, this is good. So set native size so that it looks fine. And we don't need the text, honestly. We delete that text, and so we duplicate this, move it here, and this will be my cannonball tower. see if we have a cannonball symbol or a cannon or let's see, lightning. It doesn't matter much, but I would like to have a cannon symbol, which I don't. Okay, so we will add a fire symbol to my cannon tower, and then we'll duplicate this button and move it on the right. And I also need an ice symbol, so I'm gonna make this blue so it signifies ice. And this is my cannon tower, ice tower, arrow tower, button. Actually, I need to call them buttons because that's what they are, button. Alright, so cannon tower button, we check the red part, and then for arrow tower I want something like brownish, maybe. This is fun. And of course, classically for my tutorials I will add an outline. As you know, I love outlines because they make every button just pop a little bit better. Yep, that works way better. So I'm also gonna make these buttons larger. I want them to be square, so I'm gonna do 200 by 200 on all of them. 200 by 200, and I will move them down so that they are on the same page. And I will add one more button to this user interface. It's gonna be my button. It's gonna be my close cancel button. Move over here, and I will rename it to say cancel. And all this button will do is close this window. So it's just gonna add this function here, and game object set active false, that is it. And also this text is way too small. There we go. So which tower would you like to place? We'll go to our gameplay UI, and we will add a button, couple buttons here, public button, arrow tower button, I don't need it, cannon tower, ice tower. And so we will, what this will do is, oh, I also need the image placement tower UI. So placement tower, oh, I also need to store this, guys, so I'm gonna store it, private tower placement point controller. I'm gonna call it point controller. So point controller equals placement point. And then I'm gonna create, of course, a private void set of buttons that will exist on my awake function. I'm gonna set up buttons, and what it will do is my arrow tower button, on click the add listener, whenever it gets clicked, we will use a Lambda expression. And if you know what Lambda expressions are, they basically mean basically give you the power to set a function inside a listener in this case. So you have the empty functions, void is not gonna return anything, and then you just set whatever you want to happen open here. And what we'll do is we're gonna set the tower placement point, point controller dot, I don't think we have any function in there to create a tower. So also we don't have the tower prefabs here or anything, so we are we need to get a little more up to speed here. So public game object arrow tower prefab, cannon tower prefab, and ice tower prefab. So point controller, I will go ahead and generate a new tower. So game object tower equals instantiate arrow tower prefab and the parent is going to be my point controller that transform, and then the point controller needs to be told about this tower, and it needs to be told that it's going to be occupied. So we'll go ahead and grab that by saying, well, I'm going to do public void tower placed, and we need a tower placement point controller. No, a base tower controller. Tower. So we do tower, this the tower equals tower, and then occupied is true. And I'm going to do something else right now, which is gonna be my public void tower removed, and this is gonna be this a tower. Well, I don't need this anymore. Tower equals null, occupied equals false, and this also only happens, this exact thing only happens if not occupied, then this happens. Alright, so now we go back to our UI controller and we tell our point controller that it's occupied. So point controller that tower placed tower that get component base tower controller. That's it. And of course we need this. So we'll do the same thing for all three types of towers. Whoops, and all three buttons, of course. So this is my bomb tower or cannon tower. What was it? I can't remember the name. Cannon tower. There we go. So this is gonna be my cannon tower prefab. This is ice tower, and this is gonna be my ice tower prefab. Okay, I see that these guys are all complaining about the same thing, and that's because I am dumb and I forgot to place one of these at the end of this thing. I'm gonna hit enter also because I want to see the whole function here. Okay, so that is exactly what we want to do. We also need, of course, the prefabs, and we need this guy to be off at the start of the game. We're just gonna wait a little. We're gonna close this, and we will go and also, where's my gameplay UI controller? We'll add the placement tower UI is this arrow tower button. I forgot to call it button, so I'm just gonna change this button and the button. Now we go ahead and check that they will change names. Whoops, I forgot to change their names. Arrow tower button, cannon tower button, and ice tower button. There we go. Now it will work. Okay, so we wait a little bit until they are placed or replaced. There we go. So arrow tower button, cannon tower, cannon tower button, and ice tower button. Then we have the prefabs. We go to arrow tower here, arrow tower, cannon tower. Oh, what? Tower? Bomb tower. I called it bomb tower, whatever. And the ice tower over here. So now we test. We'll go ahead and hit play and see how this works. Okay, we click and we don't get anything. Why would that be? So my tower placement point controllers are being occupied by default. So let's check out that they are not occupied anymore. Click, and they seem to still be occupied, or something weird's happening. Oh. What? Oh, yeah, I was a little weirded out by that, but show tower menu. awake. Let's just confirm that they're not occupied. Occupied is false. Because we did check that the on mouse down thing worked. So for some reason it's not working. Tower placement point controller. They all have the tower. Oh, I'm gonna apply this. I'm gonna delete this if not occupied thing. Just I need to confirm. Oh, is this actually doing something? No, that is the problem. Okay, so tower placement tower UI game object that set active is true. I was like, well, that's very strange, but alright, go back to having this occupied thing. Click play and see what happens. Okay, so we click and we do get the thing, and as you can see, the tower got placed very weird, very weird. So we're gonna double click on this, and we can see that the tower's all the way up here for some reason. And look at that weirdness. So 111. You see that it's like slimmed up somehow. It probably has something to do with the parent's scale. Yeah. So instead of setting the parent, I'm just gonna move the tower to that position. So we're gonna go here, and we will not set the parent to this. We will not set the parent to be that thing. We will only instantiate at that point. I mean, we'll instantiate it and move it to that point. So basically, we're gonna do tower transform that position equals point controller that transform that position, and that is basically the way that we're gonna be handling. You can see that my code is repeated, but it doesn't matter all that much. Okay, we wait a little bit, we hit play again, and we will check out how that works. Click, and we have the cannonball at the right position, and that is so exciting. Okay, so as you can see, if I click again, this will not work because it's occupied now. We can create more towers, but there's another problem, which is the window is not closing, so I can just create as many towers as I want. So we're just gonna get this, and we're going to add it over here, and we're gonna set this to be not active anymore as soon as we finish with the placement of the tower, so that we can only add one single tower. I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna create a tower real quick. You can see that it closed. And here we have the situation that I want to check out. I want my tower to be able to, see enemies. So we need to go to our prefabs, towers, and we'll instantiate one of each of these towers. And for each of them, I'm gonna add a component, and I'm going to call this component, it's call this component, it's funny. So I'm just gonna add a sphere collider. I'm gonna set it to be a trigger. I'm gonna move the center up like that, and I'm gonna make it way larger like that. So whenever an enemy enters my trigger, I will fight or shoot that enemy. So same thing here, I'm gonna add a sphere collider, trigger. This actually is well centered, I like it, and I'm gonna radius it way more. Apply, remove that tower. Whoops, what? No, what happened? It's fine, it's not applied. So now we add another sphere collider, is trigger, increase the radius so that it affects the enemies in the base, apply. And finally, the other thing that I want to do with this, I want to delete this guy. I want to add to this house, my headquarters. I want to add a base tower controller to it. And my prefab for shooting is going to be this. And the way that this will work is I will be shooting out of, oh, well, that will not work. I'm going to add an arrow tower controller. And my prefab is going to be the arrow tower arrow here. Apply. And of course, we have a box collider right now. We will move the collider or increase the size of the collider on one of the faces. So like this, no, like that, maybe like this. And I guess it's fine. And then here, just a little bit. So whoever enters to attack me, I will attack them back when I apply. And so we'll see what happens now. I guess the house will be a showcase of the towers, but I don't want that, so I'm just gonna create more towers. And that did not work. Why? So we're gonna go to resources and check that my enemies are correctly tagged. We are. And we're gonna check on trigger enter. Oh, I get it. So we're gonna be doing public virtual void shoot on trigger enter. This has to be a protected virtual void. Where's my, yeah, I think that's enough for my base tower setup. I have to now move on to set each tower up. So okay, that's fine. We're gonna talk about what happened this session. We set up the base tower, base tower, and we set up these points to be clickable and to be able to spawn towers, and we also gave the headquarters the power to shoot. It's just not ready yet because we only set the base tower. We now have to set up each tower individually. So that's it for this session, guys. Thank you for watching, and let's move on to 4.2, which is going to be arrow tower setup. Thank you for watching. Be right back.